Yo, this is Wackaflcka. Today we'll be analyzing a play that I did, because very rarely nowadays will I see a play where I go, I didn't actually know how to play that. And this is one of them. Although this play worked out, I would have liked to play it better. I reacted slowly to some things, but it's also because I didn't really know what to do. Because in most cases, when I see a play or I go for a play, I see all the champions on the enemy team and I play the fight in my head. Like I almost like simulate the entire fight. Like 0.5, like 0.1 second before the entire play happens, I simulate where everything that will happen, so I know how to play accordingly. It also helps me react faster if something happens. And sometimes something random will happen, and what I simulated in my head is not what corresponds to what happens in the game, and my brain just dies, and I just poop and I die because something completely random happens. This usually happens in lower elo, but I am sometimes, or more often than not, able to react and correct the play and then continue. But in this one, that was not the case. I just didn't have an idea as to how to play it. But one thing was for sure, I had to force the play. And we'll be looking at that today. And another reason why I want to show this is because I had someone ask or I saw someone ask on Reddit, how do I like win on Twitch? It's so much harder than other ADCs. Like, why do I struggle in this champion? And the answer to this is Twitch sometimes actually has to force a play. Because he's a very explosive champion. He has an ultimate which has to be utilized properly if you want to have the most impact in a fight. And sometimes if another champion forces these plays, then what will end up happening is that they will die so quick regardless. And then the moment for when you have your play be able to be happening, everyone will be dead and it's only you left alive. So you either need to react really quickly, or the entire play will just fail, regardless if someone else engaged it. So sometimes you might actually have to engage the play for it to be the proper play. Although you might not be able to kill as many people or do as much as you can, at least you'll be able to force a more favorable fight as opposed to if you went to do it. So that's what we'll be looking at today. I don't remember the exact timing, but I do think it was somewhere around here. Yeah. So basically, when you're playing Twitch, because you have an ultimate, you sometimes need to force a certain situation. Obviously, some champions can engage and set up a proper fight for you, but let's take this here as an example, okay? Nidalee is extremely fed. Irelia is quite strong as well, even though her score might not say so. Renekton is not that big of a threat. They have Samira, which can be very, very explosive as well if she gets to pop off her ultimate, and then you, as Twitch, might not actually be able to do anything because she can just eat you and then ult you and you'll die. And also Silas' support here is quite popping as well. So even if some of these other champions were to engage, although we don't really have that many that can, Poppy as an example, or Yasuo, it might not actually have that big of a favorable outcome because they'll be able to like snowball and like get the ball rolling a lot harder, and then when it's your moment to turn or go in, then certain champions have been able to like roll up, right? So like Samira will get her stacks and she'll just ult you and you'll take a lot more damage. So if you're the one that engages these fights, then you kind of just prevent that from happening altogether. Also because you just like kind of like pop out and just start bursting everyone. Everyone's already lost like at a minimum 30% HP, which then just makes the situation a lot more awkward for them as well. Because as I said, I simulate most fights in my head and they probably do too. So when they just have a Twitch open out of nowhere, that probably throws them off guard a bit. And they have to replan everything. So first, we'll just look at this fight, and then I will talk about it after. Because as I said again, I didn't know what to do here, other than the fact that I said on Discord, I'm going in here. I'm pretty sure I said, this is me, I said on Discord to Danny. So he buffs me, I run in, and then I see them all stacked like this. It's really good. But then what happens is that Renekton and Irelia stuns me. The stun from Irelia is actually what threw me most off here. The fact that Renekton engaged would have been fine. And then I go in. I thought to myself that I cancelled all auto attacks there, but when looking back, I didn't actually. But Irelia having Frozen Heart threw me off there. Because when I was counting auto attacks when I was doing them, it felt a lot slower. And only after that I realized she had Frozen Heart because I didn't look. So now we'll look at this fight again. How I should have played it. And it's still something I kind of struggle with answering. But I'm sure we will be able to find something more favorable here. Because ideally with my ultimate, I don't want to get isolated by one champion like Irelia did to me. But again, I also don't want to kind of like jump into everyone and have that happen. So let's just play this again. So open, And this in particular here is an extremely good situation for me. They're all stacked, and I have my Titanic Hydra because swag. So you'll see here like 1 auto attack, 2 auto attacks, and they start getting cleaved. Obviously now I want to now focus on Aurelia because I want to continue hitting the people that are stacked, right? But then in this situation here, it's where it's awkward for me. Because I don't know where I would want to flash here, ideally. I mean, if I want to avoid this, flashing forward somehow would be good. Like, even flashing here. Because my entire play dies the second this happens. Because I have to flash away, right? Like, everything just dies to me at this moment where I have to flash away and I'm only hitting one person. But also, they're splitting apart. So, like, it's a really hard situation to tell where I should have flashed or how I should have played it. Ideally, I should have spaced a bit better, and I think that's the biggest problem overall. I just should have tried to space a bit better. We'll look at it again. But I do think it's fair enough to have like certain situations or games where you just didn't know what you should have done. I do think this is one where I might not have the concrete answer at all, because it's just so difficult to know. And in most cases I'll say I misplayed that, and I thought myself I misplayed this too. But again, it's very hard to like say what exactly I should have done here. Like, I can't flash forward now to continue. I can't really flash down here at this point. And spacing backwards would have allowed me to like dodge the Renekton ultimate. Or if Lulu, as an example, would have had ultimate, then she could have knocked him, prevent it. But the thing I'm looking at most here is where should I have flashed to like avoid the Renekton stun, and how could I like have continued my momentum, because I lose my momentum here, and that's the thing that I'm kind of complaining about, or the thing that I'm pondering, because I lost all momentum again when Irelia went on me, and I would have liked to find a way, I would like to find a way in which I could continue my momentum, but it's really hard to find anything here, because even if I flash forward at this point, I'm not really going to continue hitting like multiple people with my ultimate. As you can see here, they're all spread out. So unless I was standing on this side here, or this side here, there is not going to be a way in which I will continue to auto-attack them. But now we see them all turn in again. So if I have my ultimate at this point still, it's being half duration. I think not flashing at all and just walking back would actually have been the right play. Because I just isolated myself, but my ultimate ended. So I don't think I could have flashed forward at all actually to do anything here. Because that's my first thought that I had when I was thinking about this game, is I should have flashed forward somehow. But seeing as how they were all stacked, that would have just ended, or like made things worse for me. Because one thing I've said before is, if you're playing Twitch, and you have your ultimate up or something, you kind of want to like herd everyone into like a frontal cone. So like you'll just continuously like hit as many people as you can. And if I flash forward, I kind of just, I remove that ability for myself, because I can not do that anymore then. But if I were to go straight backwards, then I would obviously pull them into my team. Okay, so let's look here now. Because most of the times when I analyze these plays, I don't want to like take too many other people into consideration. Poppy is not even being there was kind of bad. But again, I had to force in this moment here because it was such a like favorable outcome for me. I just knew that if I could get enough damage off her, then we'd win the fight. But if Poppy were here, this would have been actually even better. Because then she could just zone Renekton off me with a W. But these are the things you shouldn't take into consideration. Because then, if I'm opening here, I'm taking that into consideration, then it's my fault for not waiting for Poppy or not playing around Poppy being on me. That makes sense. And obviously there will be times where you will figure out the answer to your question being like, you should have waited for this person or played a bit different. Like as an example, I had a game here where they had a Blitzcrank, I think, and we had a champion that could tank the shot. I don't recall exactly, but the right play would have actually been for me to tell the person to take Blitzcrank hook and then play around that, and then I would have won the fight, but I lost it because I didn't do that. And there would have been no other way for me to play that play correctly unless Blitzcrank like missed the hook or I dodged it. So like the right play for me then, what I came to the conclusion is that I should have just waited to ask them to take the Blitzcrank hook. Like that's all they need to do. They didn't have to kill anyone, they didn't have to do anything, but literally just take the Blitzcrank hook. Which I didn't do because I didn't think about it at all until after the play. And we ended up losing that game, I think. But I think just pulling back here is as straight answer as I can get. Because the more I look over it, I couldn't really play them much different. The only biggest mistake is like flashing here, but again, I think this is fine because again, if I go into this corner here and someone else comes, they'll also be in the cone that I talked about. The only problem is that I'm kind of isolating myself or like kind of shying away from my supports here, which is the issue. But since no one else is really here, then it's not a big issue. As Lulu is still able to shield me and help me out here, it's not that big of a problem. Whereas if I would have just gone straight backwards, then that would not have been an issue. Although then the enemies might have piled on top of me, which would have meant that they piled on top of everyone. Because even though I seem quite strong here, we're actually behind. I majorly threw this game at earlier stages of the game by not playing properly, and this Poppy was just crying the entire fucking game, making my mental fucking nuts. So yeah. I don't know. I think overall this is just a strange play, and it's really hard to say what the right play is. Obviously, one thing is to sidestep more, but I was just so like, I was so wanting to just like fist that I wanted to flash forward in the moment, but then I got stunned, and at that point I couldn't flash forward anymore, which is maybe what threw me off here. Because I think this is the right play, but because Renekton runs into me and like flashes even, then I can't continue. But if he would have kept running, so I think just spacing backwards at an earlier stage here, but the fact that he flashed kind of makes that. Yeah, I think the only thing is maybe just go down here, but I think the isolating. The more I look at this play, the more I just think I played it correctly. But it just didn't feel like I played it correctly. Because I just didn't know what to do here. It was just such an awkward position. But I knew that I had to force something, because as I said, like if someone else tried to force the fight, then they might have just been picked off instantly, because Nidalee can execute people extremely fast. So if it's someone like Poppy or Yasuo that goes in, then they might just get one shot, and then there's no point in continuing the play, because they can just choose to walk away as well. So the more people have alive on a Starman play is going to be the better option. But this, at least this just showcases like you have to sometimes just be the one to engage in forced situations. And I saw that they pinged Renekton Aftermath, but I don't think that Renekton walking away would have been the right choice either, because then they would all be walking in the same line, and then I would just continue my plan, original plan that is. So I think Renekton flashing put me off guard. I think just spacing backwards earlier would have been the right play, but it's so hard to control because you just want to like, you just want to fist. You want to keep up the momentum. I think when Renekton ults here, it kind of makes the thing like, obvious that he's going to go in. So then back spacing or like starting earlier instead of like going right here because I wanted to keep hitting them. I don't know, it's a weird fight. It's really hard to say, but I think the best play for me would have been to probably not go to the side here and just go backwards and play with Manchanas, because now they're kind of getting forced off. But I don't think Irelia can really do anything against these champions anyway at this point, that she's just holding her W at this point here. And she has no ultimate and no way of like continuing her stun. So yeah. Even though it's really hard to do in these situations, I think backspacing and like letting go at some point is good. Because sometimes, as I said, if they don't know what's gonna happen or they haven't like planned the fight ahead, then they will like run away. So you'll like see this here as an example with the Samira. When I open, she runs away. So like at this point here, she's probably like thinking or like planning and looking at the champion's estate where to go in. And then Renekton goes in, she kind of like, okay, she looks for a plan. She tries to jump in, but she gets killed by the Ivan. So even if we had to like start kiting backwards there as opposed to like trying to push forward still, I would lose some damage because I would stop hitting everyone, but I wouldn't be put in this situation. So I think just recognizing faster when I should go back and just space. Although, because I don't see, the thing I want to look here is there any way I could have flashed forward or dodged everything and just continued by momentum? But there is no place I could have flashed or anywhere I could have gone to do that. So I think the only thing I can really take from this is that fighting backwards sometimes is as opposed to just going full momentum. Because it's also really hard to recognize that when you should do that, especially in these team fight scenarios where it's so tempting to just continue this cleave on the enemies. Because like if I started going backwards earlier than this, because at some point they're gonna walk into you, so then you don't want to click forward as they're clicking into you, because then you'll create distance, right? So if I would have done that slightly earlier here, I probably would have been able to space Renekton as well. Also have my flash still. Yeah. I actually didn't play that this bad. The more I look at it. Even though I hate it at the moment. Yesterday that being. And yeah, this just really showcases why it's so important to sometimes have, or why you sometimes have to be the one to engage, which can be very hard on Twitch because you might lack the confidence. Obviously I'm playing 9k tech here, which is a bit different as opposed to playing full crit. But I do think that regardless of this, your build, this is something you might have to do at times, because you have to force this fight and have them go in and then have your champions engage after. Because the problem is that Poppy can't run into them, but she can like fight them when they're within her zone, because then she won't be the one to get picked off. Neither will Yasuo. It's like just forcing people into you by opening in Twitch and then having your champions, like your teammates, like fighting after that, especially against this like pick champion, pick heavy team. It's the right play. Even though it's really scary at times, I do think that it's the right play to do. Because again, if Poppy goes in, she might just get stunned by Renekton and pick Banyan and shit, or like same with Yasuo, right? So it's very hard for them to find the right situations, as opposed to you where you just only the ultimate, have a big range, and then force them into you, and then your teammate will fight afterwards. You just have to make sure that all your teammates are there. Of course, I didn't have Poppy here, but I think that was outweighed by the fact that we just had them all clumped up together, and I got to spike them so hard to begin with. But yeah, that is it. All in all, actually not as bad as I felt that I was yesterday. And I'm kind of pleased by that. But yeah. Hope you guys continue to have a good morning, evening, night, whichever one fits you later. And yeah, take care. Peace.